on their elderly parents or on their teenagers. Speaking for myself, I want a few more things. Helping companies get started and grow, giving people a secure place to save and invest for retirement, enhancing and enforcing the special protections for service members, very important to me, allowing innovators to focus on pioneering new services without worrying about playing the regulatory arbitrage game. I'm sad to say that the Financial Choice Act appears to be a failure on almost all these measures. So I will push several amendments today to try to address this failure. I'll offer an amendment to strip out the provisions in the bill that make it harder for financial cops to investigate crimes and abuses. That amendment will also strip out provisions in the bill that make it harder for regulators to punish companies that are caught. I expect bipartisan support for that amendment, as I simply cannot imagine anyone wants to stand up and take a position that it should be harder to investigate financial crimes. I'll offer an amendment to strip out the provisions of the bill that subject banks and non-banks to different rules and different supervisory regimes. This was bad for startups and bad for the economy. Entrepreneurs struggled because picking the right charter or location provided a bigger competitive advantage than having the best ideas. At the same time, problems festered and grew in the gaps in federal supervision. The Consumer Bureau was created, in part to put all financial service companies under a uniform federal standard. That's good for entrepreneurs, good for financial stability, and good for well-regulated companies that can compete on a level playing field. This bill tears up that uniform standard and sets the playing field askew again. It returns us to the days when picking your regulator matters more than picking the best innovations. I have never heard anyone advocate for an unlevel playing field, so I hope to have the support of all my colleagues on this amendment. I'll support amendments to strip out the provisions in this bill that will serve to undermine small businesses. This bill repeals the Volcker Rule, which bars banks from pouring their resources into trading and so instead forces them to make loans. This bill clears the path for banks and financial firms to grow through mergers and acquisitions to ever larger sizes, even though we know that small businesses' credit comes from small banks. We will offer several amendments to reverse these provisions, and I'll support them all. I'll offer amendments to preserve the Consumer Bureau that protects consumers of all stripes, and I'll seek to expand its role in protecting service members. James Madison once said, "If men were angels, no Consumer Financial Protection Bureau would be necessary," or something like that. Sadly, we are all fallen. Con artists will always be with us. There are bad people who seek to gain advantage by putting other people at risk, and they are especially dangerous when it comes to certain products, like food, drugs, and financial services. So Americans have long recognized that one of the essential roles of government is protecting consumers from these dangers. In a huge step backwards, this bill cripples and neuters the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The Consumer Bureau has protected all manner of consumers from all sorts of abuses, but I want to highlight its work especially for vulnerable populations. One vulnerable population of special interest to me is active duty service members, who are often young with new families, and they're also often stuck thousands of miles from home. We have set up special protections for these brave families, and the Consumer Bureau has been vigilant in flagging violations of these laws. I think it's time to give them actual enforcement power, and I will offer an amendment to do that today. I hope to have broad support from my colleagues today on these and many other efforts to improve this bill. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair wishes to make an announcement in consultation